Hey Tony, it's Thursday. First off, to answer your question of the week, it's kind of a joke among some of my friends that I tend to play hyper competent loners with cool stuff. You know, kind of like a Batman esque character build, something like that. It's just an ongoing joke that we all make, because we all have our character builds that we like playing. I do hyper competent loner with cool stuff. Jay always plays a neurotic monster baby. Taylor always plays Team Mom. And we all have our little roles we like to play, and our good friend John plays a pizza rat. And I think nothing more needs to be said about that. So what I want to talk about this week is we're gonna go, kind of on like a bigger discussion again on wealth. In particular, we're gonna go on like a comparison between how people use that wealth. So obviously, right now, I'm doing a lot of research on the Gilded Age, on 1865 to 1900, that era, and that was the era of robber barons. That was your era of Carnegies, Rockefellers, etc., etc. And it's not that far from what we have today with our era of tech billionaires, your Elon Musk's, your Jeff Bezos's, your Bill Gates. But one thing that was really big about the Gilded Age robber barons compared to our current day tech robber barons was the way they used their wealth. Now, again, we're talking about like more money than any person can spend in their entire life. That's just the nature of it. But Andrew Carnegie ended up coming up with a philosophy that he called the gospel of wealth. And we can compare that to, prosperity gospel, which is something completely different, even has a very similar name. But the gospel of wealth was basically like, we have all this money, therefore we are, God's chosen, and because we are God's chosen, we need to use this money to benefit the world. And remember, this was an era before the income tax, so a lot of our tech barons today tend to maybe they'll do like a big charitable donation to put it as a write-off on taxes, whereas that wasn't how it was in the 1880s. Instead, what people like Carnegie did was they invested their money into communities. The Kent Free Library was a Carnegie library, and he made so many throughout the country. Rockefeller did the same, and it was the idea that we have all this wealth. Because we have all this wealth, it is our duty to benefit the world. Now, there's certainly a lot to be said about their business practices that completely monopolized everything, their brutal, occasionally violent methods, but at least like in that sense, they understood that they were granted they had earned this incredible wealth that they should use to benefit. And we just don't see that very much anymore. Like Bill Gates is the one example, like the one I can think of who has done an awful lot for global health. And I might not like Bill Gates personally. I think he also had a lot of business decisions that were really bad and really hurt a lot of people. But he has put his money where his mouth is and has done a lot for charity. Again, there's certain like arguments made of like, oh, it's just a tax write-off, but there's still a very essence. Even if that is the case, even if that is just the only selfish reason, there's been a lot of wealth that has been invested into communities around the world. And you don't see that very much with your Elon Musks, with your Jeff Bezoses and people like that. Instead, what we see a lot more is just I want the money to have the money. I want to win capitalism. I want to be the richest person who's ever lived. I'll be the world's first trillionaire. And that's what just builds a lot of these robber barons up. This is what their goal is just to accumulate wealth. And I am not a wealthy man. I make no claims on the contrary. But if I had that much wealth, I think I would want to benefit the world, because the impact that you can have with those fortunes can benefit so many people. You can help you can help cure a lot of diseases. I mean, like again, I'll go back to Bill Gates. Bill Gates has done a lot against malaria, and malaria is a incredibly deadly disease in sub-Saharan Africa, and he has done a lot to build that up and really like to try and help people. Whereas you don't see that from your Musks, you don't really see that from your Bezoses. Instead, they're doing their vanity projects like like, the Blue Origin rocket that Bezos has, or the other rocket for, I think, Virgin Airlines, hit like his rocket, where it's like, oh, we're space tourists, that's what we're using our money for. And that's, again, I'm saying this from a very ground floor level, but that seems wrong. It seems like the wrong use of those funds, which then leads me to the prosperity gospel. Now, the prosperity gospel is it's not really a fringe movement anymore, but it has a lot of like fringing aspects to it. Basically, what the prosperity gospel is you should donate your money to God, and you should basically make your life challenging. But it's these mega churches who do that. Your Joel Osteens, who's, the biggest one, where it's, oh, donate your money to the church, and that'll help you in front of God. When in reality, it's just used by people like Osteen, people like the Falwells, to just pad their own pocketbooks. But it's the framing of it of like, oh, you should do this because this is what God wants. God wants you to suffer a little bit, so you should donate to my megachurch. And to compare that to the gospel of wealth, it's so night and day, in which these people who have, again, the robber barons with the gospel of wealth, they did use some of that to benefit the world. Whereas instead, like, your Osteens end up taking money from your, everyday normal people and filling to them. It's, a reverse Robin Hood type situation. And I think people who really do believe in the power of wealth, and the fact that they have all this wealth makes them, in some way, shape, or form better than everyone else, I think it's really worth it to examine on what can I do with this wealth that I've earned or has been given to me, or what have you. What can I do to make an excise impact on the earth? Because you only have one life. Now, like, arguments to be made for like reincarnation or heaven, things like that. But here in the flesh and blood world, you have one life. And I think it turns into a question of, what do you want to do with your life? Do you want to hoard more and more wealth, or do you want to use that wealth that you've earned or gained or taken and use it to help people? Listen, this is me coming from a public interest attorney, so I am certainly slanted in I think I would use that money to help people, but I think it's a discussion that those in the wealthy and powerful should have. So Tony, my question for you is, what are some of your thoughts on the gospel of wealth? Or an alternative, did you know that about the Kent Free Library, that it was one of the Carnegie libraries? Tony, I'll see you tomorrow. Again, sorry it's been a crazy week. I didn't get to this video today. Later, bro.